This morning, two big headlines hitting the Trump presidency. The first, a deal and defeat for President Trump.
If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency.
Also, the Roger Stone indictment.
I will plead not guilty to these charges. I will defeat them in court. I believe this is a politically motivated investigation.
I want to bring in now Lauren Leader, Democratic strategist, and also Joe Watkins, Republican strategist and former White House aide to President George H.W. Bush. To both of you, welcome. Joe, I want to start with you and Roger Stone. So you've got layers here getting peeled back, getting closer to the core of the president. What does it mean for President Trump?
Well, it doesn't help the president that 6 of his closest advisors have now been indicted. And Roger Stone, of course, has a more than 30-year relationship with President Trump. So he's perhaps one of the closest advisors and personal friends with the president. So this is not good news for the president. It certainly, again, brings the country's full attention back to the Mueller investigation. And clearly, Robert Mueller is not going to litigate this in the media as Roger Stone is trying to do. He obviously is very, very serious, and these charges should be taken seriously. If I were Roger Stone, I wouldn't be talking to the media about the case. Yeah,
we saw him with the interview, press conference there, and making a couple of appearances on cable news. He also says his indictment, though, stems from the investigation, not from anything he did before they started asking him questions. So, Lauren, is it too much of a leap here to say that this is clearly collusion?
Well, again, I think, the point has been made a lot over the last few months that in terms of, criminal terms and legal terms, that's not really the issue. The conspiracy question is really the legal question. But I think, look, the bigger issue is, there's a certain irony to Roger Stone's lifelong idolization of Richard Nixon and the charges that he's facing, which is that essentially that he worked in concert with WikiLeaks, which basically conducted the same kind of break-in that the Nixon administration conducted in their campaign when they broke into the DNC. That is what WikiLeaks did. They broke into the DNC virtually, but it's a break-in nevertheless. I mean, they stole private emails. And it is sort of unbelievable that you've got someone like Roger Stone who idolizes Richard Nixon to the point that he has his face tattooed on his back. It tells you everything you need to know about this guy's values. I think there's a lot here, and it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, he was adamant in his appearances yesterday, saying that he's not going to bear false witness against the president.
I mean, he's lied repeatedly. I don't know why anyone would take anything that he says seriously, but I think it's likely that he's going to try to stonewall and not cooperate, and I think he's going to go down. Robert Mueller, as the our colleague here said, if Robert Mueller doesn't come to play, he has, I'm sure, irrefutable evidence, or he wouldn't have gotten the grand jury indictment.
Yeah, can you see that happening, Joe? Him flipping here, he said, he's not going to quit, he's not going to fold, he's not going to bend when it comes to this.
Well, he's saying that now, of course, but perhaps as time goes on and he realizes the seriousness of the charges, he may give it a second thought. After all, he's a man in his late 60s, and he's got to consider that if he's convicted of these charges, he could spend a lot of time in prison, maybe even the rest of his life. So when it comes to considering that, people sometimes flip.
Well, let's talk about the president here and shift to the shutdown. Joe, sticking with you. Of course, we're hearing a lot of grief from his base, accusing him of caving here. So do you see that as a cave? Were there just no options here? What was the tipping point?
It was a good thing that the president gave in to Democrats and said, let's reopen the government. It shouldn't have been shut down in the first place. And if you consider all the people that were hurt and then the millions of Americans who were impacted negatively by this shutdown, and then, of course, the national economic ripple effects, it's a good thing that the government is reopened. And I hope it doesn't shut back down again in mid-February. That would be a disaster, of course, for our country. But I think the president has left open the option to call a national emergency to get the money to build this wall.
When you talk about getting to the shutdown to begin with and the factors there, Ann Coulter being one of them, of course, she's been vocal about it. Here's her take last night. Let's listen.
Crazy that I expect a president to keep the promise he made every day for 18 months.
Right.
No, it's not just, it's the base. That's what happened.
All right, so she went on to call the president a wimp in a tweet, Lauren. I'm sure you saw that, too. So when it comes to his base, what are they thinking? What level of anger are they at now?
Well, look, I mean, I think he's losing support left and right. I mean, he himself, as has been reported over and over and over again, he himself claimed responsibility for the shutdown and then tried to shift blame to the Democrats, which was a failing and miserable strategy. Look, I think at the end of the day, everyone loses. Everyone loses in a government shutdown. I mean, I know there's a tendency to sort of feel like the Democrats won here, but everyone loses. And I think that's what the Democrats have been trying to convey to the president for, from the beginning. In the end, he winds up signing the bill that was basically the identical bill to what passed both houses on December 18th. We could have avoided the whole thing. And you know what? This is not how government works, and this is not how democracy works. When there are elections, and the American people elect representatives to Congress, and it is the role of Congress to make the laws and to pass appropriations and to fund the government. You don't hold 800,000 people hostage because you don't get what you want. And I really hope the president learns his lesson with this. He will lose over and over and over again on this. Let's make a deal and work on this seriously, but you don't hold millions
hostage. Let me ask Joe about this. Let me ask Joe about that. Is there any credit that we should give the president here for opening that? Who wins more? Who's a bigger winner there when it comes to the president or Nancy Pelosi and Democrats?
I think Nancy Pelosi was the bigger winner here because she said no money for a border wall, and indeed there is no money for a border wall. I think that Democrats and Republicans both want to talk about border security, but I think the wall is a non-starter for Democrats. And as long as that is the issue for the president, he's not going to get his money. He's going to have to call a national emergency, I think.
And we'll see what's going to happen in those 3 weeks. Joe Watkins, Lauren Leader, to both of you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.